started.
Hey guys, my name's Vic with Verdant Insurance. This is my brother Vince. We've been a part of the used car dealer community now for more than a year. We've been going on for well over 14, 15 years now. There's been a lot of shifts and different things that have gone down throughout the years, and we'll kind of fast forward to where we're at, what we've seen. It's going to be about 4 or 5 different things we want to go over for housekeeping items as business owners to watch out for. The first one that we want to go over is test drive agreements and why they are kind of a big deal. If these are not being implemented within your dealership, the chances are when a customer comes in, test drives a car, and this little guy is not being used at your business, chances are you're on the hook every time in the event of a stolen vehicle when somebody comes and test drives a car. If they also get into a car accident, you are on the hook. There's a lot of value that's brought to the table by using these test drive agreements because it's designed to where the third party is primary. You as the business owner is secondary.
Does IDS have the test drive?
IDS has plenty of the paperwork to offer the test drive agreements to protect you and your business in those events. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of when, so please use them.
How often do we win when they sign a test drive agreement, Vic?
Every time. The only situation we may have is if they have liability only. We'll talk about that later on. But everything else that we've seen throughout the course of being down here, those are there for a reason. Please use them.
Thank you. Another thing that Vic and I get asked a lot are employees, whether they're 1099 or W-2. They do need to be listed onto your policy. So that's important. If they're driving a vehicle or servicing a vehicle, there's different classifications that we need to add them on to. So it's very important we do that. A lot of times, I'm not going to say it, but please have your employees added onto the policy. There is a charge for it. Every company's different, and we'll give you, if they're full-time or part-time, what that costs.
We've also seen in that same situation where, what if my employee has a DUI, or what if my employee has a motor vehicle report where they got a laundry list of items on their motor vehicle report, and the insurance company comes back and says, this person cannot drive. That's not the end of the story, guys. You can still have this person still operate your business as a salesperson, a lot tech, and do all the basic duties except being behind the wheel. Okay? So we've noticed that doing some of these insurance renewals or talking to other business owners, they're like, boy, we sure missed out on John because he was a good employee. Well, John can still be employed there. It just can't be behind the wheel.
Very important. Next subject is inventory. Since COVID, this has been a very fragile market for you guys. Inventory is high, inventory is low. It's very important that you guys look at your policy at renewal, average out how many months you've been in with your inventory to see if that's the right number. A lot of times, if your neighbor or your family member being your insurance agent, we're not going to cut down the inventory. We only have to do that once a year. Well, that's fake news, everybody. It's got to be done when you guys ask them to. So if you have $1 million inventory, you only have $100,000, please email your agent, update my inventory. It's so important. That will save you guys money down the road. And then when things get back going up again, you email your agent to bump your inventory back up. So as we all know, this market is very fragile. What used to be a $10,000 truck is now a $25,000 truck. We all know this. And please take special note on what your inventory is and what you're covered for. If you have 2 locations, that's double the coverage. So you got to make sure location A is this, location B is this. We get a lot of mix-up. They're the same. No, they're not the same because there's different cars on each lot. So we need to know which is which so you are covered right.
The biggest misconception that we've seen over the years is the fact that the insured has a vehicle stolen. Let's say it's worth $25,000. They're insured for $250,000, and then the adjuster says, "Hey Vince, how much inventory you currently have? Let's go ahead and review that." And then that report comes through. Oh, you're at $500,000. I'm sorry there, Vince, but that vehicle that you were supposed to get a full payout on is now going to be on a prorated basis because you are not insured to value. So that's also a big key component there. make sure your inventory is up to snuff, whether it's in the springtime or down in the winter months. Just make sure you communicate that with your agent.
Last thing that we've been seeing a lot lately, a lot of insurance companies are getting really smart. They have a per value per car on the policy. They have a per limit. So a lot of times we see $50,000. I go into the dealership and say, hey, you guys do a lot of Porsches here or a lot of high-end trucks. Your average truck is $75,000 to $90,000. Did you know you're out this amount? They said, no, Vince, we do not. So it's important that you review your insurance policy on the things that we discussed. Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, so wrapping things up, again, we're here at Vernon Insurance. We know how things work, and we know how the moving parts, just like under the hood of a vehicle, there's a lot of things that could go south. Why it's important to work with a specialist is because we're aware of these situations. We can talk about what's going down, especially when it's claim time, about what's going to be best, whether we should get the insurance companies involved, or if it's going to be best to take care of it internally within the business. Again, there's a lot of moving parts. We'll be happy to go ahead and talk to you about a few other things about your specific needs.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank the Vernon Insurance guys for coming. It was great to have them here and always have them share some valuable information. My name is Adam Jones. I'm with Independent Dealer Solutions. We're hoping to keep you here for just a short amount of time, but make sure we cover all the appropriate things. What's that? You're good? Oh, you're good. Yeah. So, yeah, we hope to not keep you here too long. Probably about 45 minutes is what we're shooting for today. Cover everything that's needed to be covered. We're going to cover a few things that, obviously the stuff that passed, but we're also going to talk about some things that didn't pass during this legislative session that I think are key of things that are going to potentially coming up that we need to also make sure we're focused on. So everybody should have a book. We'll follow along in the book. I'll mention page numbers as we're going along, but we're here, as mentioned, to help you out from Independent Dealer Solutions as well as from the Automotive Alliance, our association that represents the used car industry. We are up at the Capitol every day during the legislative session to monitor what's going on at the Capitol. We're the only organization that's there every day at the Capitol other than the new car dealers. They're obviously focused on new car side of things, but we're here to represent the used car industry as well as body shop, mechanical repair, anything automotive related. We're there to help out with those things, and we appreciate the relationship we have with legislators. It's great when legislators can call us up and be like, hey, we have a question about this. What do we need to do? And so we've developed those relationships over the last 40 plus years being at the Capitol between myself, my father previously lobbying. So we're happy to be up there and share our knowledge and expertise. So if you open up your book, there's a table of contents as well to start with. So if you need to reference anything back. After that, just one of our ads in regards to our title and registration work. If you're not aware, we have in our office our title and registration service where we can help you out. So you don't have to go to the DMV. Obviously, there's a fee to that, but you don't have to deal with going to the DMV because everybody loves to go to the DMV. Also, if you are utilizing our services and you're not a member of the association, we do offer a 25% discount on our title and registration service. So if you're utilizing our services and you want to save a little bit of money, you can join the association. The association is $169 for the year. We can help you out with that. It's pretty reasonable. We're talking about 50 cents a day is what it is to have us represent you at the Capitol. Going on to the next page, there's a brief welcome letter from us in regards to the industry, as well as our antitrust statement, which is the next page, and then our copyright policy and infringement for any of our forms and things that we talked about. As the Vernon's talked about the test drive form, we do have that form as well as many others in our office, or you can purchase them online. You can have them shipped to you, or you can just arrange to pick them up at any one of our 3 offices. The next page over is our resource page. We have a few different resources available. Besides our 3 offices, our main office in Midvale, as well as our office in Ogden and Orem. We also have some other additional services available that we've listed here. The first one is some attorneys. If you are ever in the need of an attorney, we hope that you're don't need one, but if you are, there's a couple attorneys that we have listed here that are great. They already understand the industry. You don't have to worry about trying to teach them about the automotive industry, because there's nothing worse than paying an attorney to learn more about the industry that you already know about. And then also our insurance resource, which is Curtis J. Vernon Insurance, who was just recently in here and you heard from them. We also have additional resources on our website. So if you go to our website, idsinfo.com, you can get additional resources from information about dealer plate use to other needs from around your business, lighting, insurance, whatever it is, finance companies, things like that. We have all those available to try and help you out. And if you are available, or if you're working with a company that you find is really helpful and you want to share that with us, please reach out to us, share that resource with us. We'll be glad to share that with others as well too. Jumping on to the next page, basically page 1, we're going to start with where to find law and legislation. Oftentimes I have people ask me, where do I find out the details about the law changes and the legislation if I want to follow it myself? So on here, first page there is information about where you can find that information. So if you go to le.utah.gov, that's the legislative website. All of that page has information about the current legislation that's been worked on or just finished up. In this case, we just finished the legislative session, and so you can see all the bills that passed. There were, I think there was like 600 to 700 bills that were passed this year, so there was a lot of legislation that happens in the 45-day window. I think there was a total of almost 1,200 or 1,300 bills that were filed for a 45-day window. So there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot that isn't seen by legislators, but you can follow along. You can find the bills. You can find the law specific to the industry. You can find out who your legislator is as well, all on that website. We would encourage you to make sure that you at least go and find out who your legislator is. There's elections that come up. There will be elections coming up here in November, and so we encourage you to find out who your legislator is, who's running, and make sure you're part of that legislative process, at least know who your legislator are. We would encourage you to also reach out to them. They, on the website, they provide information about email addresses, phone numbers, so you can email them, you can text them to say, hey, I'm a constituent in your area, or I own a business that's in your area. Those are the type of things that they want to hear about. And then if they, I would even encourage them to come and visit you in your business as well, or just come and talk with you. Let you have that conversation with them to let them know a little bit more about the industry that you're in. So that's something we always encourage. So I'm actually going to start with a motor vehicle bill, and it's a bill that actually didn't pass. Every few years this topic comes up. This is from HB 305, Motor Vehicle Dealer Amendments. This was a bill that, that came up this year about potentially increasing the dealer bond. This is a subject probably every 8 to 10 years we see this come up. So if you've been around for a while, you've heard us talk about this before. This one was a little bit unique in that the legislator wanted to do a dealer increase of the dealer bond specifically for used car dealers only. And we know that whenever there's an issue, it's typically a used car dealer that we have an issue with. It's very rarely that it's a new car dealer that has an issue. I think in the last 45 years, I think there's been one new car dealer in the last 45 years that's gone out of trust. Nowadays, they basically just, somebody comes in, buys that dealership up, and they take care of the issue. But this typical issue comes up every few years because there's usually an issue with some type of dealer going out of business and going out of trust. We had that a year and a half ago. There was a dealer that went out of trust. They're still working through it. My understanding is the number is about $750,000 that dealer was upside down. So when that happens, then we usually get contact from the financial institutions. In this case, it was the Credit Union Association that reached out to us. Through this process, we've developed a good relationship with the Credit Union Association. We said, hey, we're working on some issues, and I know we talked about this a little bit last year. We're still working through those issues about trying to create a new type of system or way that we can go about the dealer bond to make sure that there's still protection for the consumer, and then basically lay out a way that we can make sure that the consumer is made whole. A $75,000 bond doesn't go a long ways, and increasing the dealer bond, let's say to $200,000 that this was discussed, is not going to be a feasible option. As we talked with the credit unions, we talked with the insurance companies, many of the insurance companies wouldn't write a $200,000 bond, or the other thing that they would do is they would actually require a letter of what's called a letter of irrevocable credit. Basically, it's a guarantee, it's a cash guarantee that you'd have to come up with for the value of that bond amount in order to secure that. Well, for a small little independent dealer, a $200,000 bond, they may not have $200,000 just sitting around doing nothing with to be able to get that. And so we basically eliminated and talked with the legislator and said, hey, we love that we're trying to protect the consumer. We want to make sure that financial institutions are taken care of. We want to make sure they're doing things right, though, but we don't want to put dealers out of business. There's too many of these small businesses, and they play a crucial part of the community. Even a $5,000 vehicle, there's somebody that's in need of that type of vehicle, and we don't want to take that opportunity away from those people that's what they can afford. So we have been able to put at least a stop on that so that bill didn't pass. So there won't be any changes to the dealer bond, but we are working closely with the Credit Union Association, the Bankers Association, with Motor Vehicle Enforcement Division, Tax Commission, and others to make sure that the solution that we have, hopefully for next year, will be the right solution, won't cost the dealer a ton of money. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of cost because we're talking about dealer bond side of things, but how that will be done. So we're working through that, and we'll have more details as the year goes on in regards to a dealer bond. But delivery is the number one thing that we need to make sure that happens. Delivery of title and delivery of those vehicles, and we're taking care of the financial side of those vehicles. When we do that, there's less issues with this subject coming up in the future. So that's our encouragement for you, is just to make sure that title delivery is done correctly each year, with each vehicle. And if you find yourself getting into trouble, don't spread it out. Don't make it a bigger issue. Get it taken care of sooner than later. Motor vehicles good to work with. Tax commission is good to work with. Insurance companies are good to work with. But when it becomes a major issue, then it hurts everybody. So that's our first bit of piece on that. Before I turn the page, we'll have on this booklet, we'll have with each of the bills what the effective date is and any necessary action that needs to be taken with that bill. Obviously, with a bill that didn't pass, there's not a huge number of action items because it didn't pass, but it's just a reminder, make sure that title delivery happens in the appropriate time frames. The other thing I would ask too is if you are running into issues with title delivery for cars that are being traded in and trying to get those titles from credit unions, please reach out to me and let me know. We've had extensive conversations with the Credit Union Association, so we're understanding a little bit, their process is a little bit better, but we want to make sure that we're getting on top of that issue. We don't want it to be a 4, 5, 6 weeks to get a title. We want that to be fairly quick. The law currently states that once you pay off a vehicle, it should get a title to you within 9 days, is what that time frame is. Now, I understand that may not always happen, but if we're getting close to that, we're, for the most part, happy. Just know that they have to go through their process. We're typically mailing out a title. They're going to hold on to the check for 3 days to make sure it clears. So there's a time frame, and that's probably going to take you at least 5 or 6 days right there of the 9 days, and then there could be some other slight delays on it. But if you're seeing extensive delays on it, please reach out to me and let me know what those issues are, and we'll continue to address those. Excuse me. If you turn the page over, HB 228, Vehicle Sales Amendments, will be our next bill. This bill goes into effect January 1, 2027. This is a bill that basically helps to define and identify specific title brands. In Utah, there wasn't really specified the specific title brands here in the state. And so to try and help with that issue from titles coming from other states, we actually specifically identified title brands that will be identified here in the state of Utah. And they're underlined here. So brand needs a label or a title certificate identifying the motor vehicle as, and these are the listed ones now for brands: fire damage, flood damage, gray market, hail damage, a stolen, recovered, or rebuilt and restored. So those are the brands that are going to be available. Somebody asked me, well, what's a gray market brand to start with? So gray market basically is a car that's manufactured outside of the United States, not initially intended for sale within the United States, and does not meet current safety and emission standards. Okay? So if it falls under those categories, and that's an and, so it's all of those things, then it would fall under that category of gray market. We'll see how many of those we see in the next little bit coming into the market. We know that there are some, but those are the other brands. Again, fire, flood, gray market, hail damage, stolen, and fire rebuilt, restored are the different titles. So they will actually have a specific brand put onto those titles now, as opposed to just a brand like salvage or rebuilt, restored. They may have some specifics on there. That can help actually identify for that customer what the actual damage was. Help educate them a little bit. One of the title brands they wanted to put on there was odometer discrepancy. So if there was any type of odometer discrepancy, they wanted to make that a title brand as well too. We said, hold on, time out. We don't want to go that route. There is already a note on the title for odometer discrepancy, and we'll keep it that way. So we were able to get that one out of there and not have that be a specific title brand, which I think was a good move. Any questions there? Okay. License plate and registration bills, HB 22, vintage vehicle amendments. There's two things to be aware of in regard to this bill that are kind of important for you. The first one is that it's going to remove the vintage vehicle designation. So if you remember, you've probably seen the vintage vehicles. There's been a lot of abuse as far as the vintage vehicle program and what it's supposed to be used for. It's not supposed to be used for cars that are being driven every day, things like that. So they're actually getting rid of that vintage vehicle program, and they're creating a classic vehicle category, basically. That classic vehicle, I have a definition there of what it is, means a motor vehicle or motorcycle with a model year of 1982 or older, and that has driven fewer than 1,500 miles per year, or a classic travel trailer. That's what falls under these classic vehicles. So it will remove that. It will create that classic program. That way, just every day, I've got an old car. It's not going to pass emissions, so I'm just going to put a vintage plate on it. That's really what was happening with it. So obviously, if it's driven a lot, it's not going to qualify as that classic vehicle. I'm sure there's probably going to be some people working through the loopholes on it, but we'll see what happens. But this is their first kind of go at that. The other part of this bill is helpful for those that may deal with vehicles that are older and don't have OBD2 technology ports on them. There are a few of those, obviously, that have ports on them, and these are typically cars that are imported from Japan, and there's a small window of these cars that we've seen where they have a port, and the reason we have to deal with the port side of things is all of the emission places are now moving to, when they do emissions, they have to plug the port in. There are some ports out there that are not an OBD2 port, but they look very similar, and so they weren't able to pass these emissions for these cars. And we typically see these as some of these Japanese vehicles that are being imported. They're not usually imported until they're at least 25 to 30 years old. They come into the States. A good example is Nissan has a few of these, like the Nissan Skyline GTR is a good example. It was in Japan, came over here after being there for 25 years. And the issue with those is, one, we can't do a tailpipe inspection for the emissions anymore, but the port on it, although it's a port that looks like an OBD2, is not an actual OBD2 sensor, and so there was no way to pass the emissions for it. So this language allows us to still have those cars registered. It basically creates an exemption for those type of vehicles that don't have the OBD2 ports on them. Any questions there? Okay. Turning the page over to page 3. HB 56, Vehicle Registration Amendments. This is the second year we've seen this particular bill. The bill basically allows for the cancellation of a vehicle registration and the refund of part of those fees. So if you were to happen to sell your car, there's still 6 months of registration on it, you would actually get a prorated registration for it. So this is the second year it's come up. It's the second year that's been killed. We'll continue to watch it, see what happens with it. But if anybody asks you about that, it didn't pass, and we'll continue to watch that for future years. Turning the page over, SB 91, Motor Vehicle Registration Service Amendments. This is a bill from Senator Wilson. If you don't know Senator Wilson, he is a new car dealer from the Logan area. He's our one lone car dealer that's in the legislature. He's from Logan. He owns a new car dealership. And this bill is a bill that he actually worked on last year. And just because the timing didn't get through it, basically it's a bill that provides funding for counties for DMV offices. There are some offices, I think there's 21 of the 29 counties have DMV offices that are part of their county offices. And the problem is when those contracts were signed, they were so long ago that now they just don't have the funds to keep everything running. So this is a way to help generate some funds for those offices. And for some of the new offices, they're actually going to build new DMV offices. So an example is Cache County. Cache County currently, their DMV office is in the Cache County building, their assessor's building, and they're actually going to fund a new building for DMV, and it's going to separate it out because they have such a need, a larger expansive need for Cache County, that they're going to have their own DMV-owned specific building and not share that anymore with the Cache County people themselves. So that's the basis of that bill. In order to help with that, the one thing that's going to affect dealers and why this particular bill is in here is they are making a change and an increase in the contributions for the historical black plate. It's normally a $25 initial fee. It's going to go up to $50 is what it is, and that will help to offset some of those costs. So the action for you with this going into effect January 1, 2027, is that if you offer the black plate, just make sure you collect the appropriate fees for that plate. If you're not familiar with what the plate fees are for that one or any of the others, you can go to the DMV website, so dmv.utah.gov, and there's a list of all the specialty plates, what their annual contribution is, and what the initial contribution is. So that's updated every year, so you can always find those. A lot of dealers just simply put the standard plates, and if the customer wants a specialty plate, they can go and get it on their own, whether that's a personalized plate, the black plates, any of those. So it's your choice as to how you want to do that. Just remember that if you are collecting those fees, that can't be a profit center for you. You should be just charging whatever that fee is for the customer as well too. And I think that's probably why a lot of dealers don't offer it, because then you have to go and figure out what those additional fees are. If you're dealing with a computer system, trying to figure out how to put that into the system, things like that all go into effect. So again, just make sure you note that $25 to $50 change on the historical black and white plate. SB 28 Vehicle Emissions Inspection Program Revisions. This is a bill that they've been working on, and it goes along with some stuff from previous years where they're trying to cut down on making sure that people are utilizing the emissions appropriately. In this case, there's now a bill that would allow, this goes into effect January 1, 2027, that would allow the state to revoke a registration if somebody's using an improper address for their registration. Typically, we see this where a car's not passing emissions. They have a grandma or a friend that lives in Tooele County where there's not emissions, and so they put the address down in that county. If the state finds out of that happening, they can actually revoke the registration. So that's what this bill does, is allow them to revoke that registration. Okay. HB 107, Vehicle Sales Tax Amendments. This is actually the second year we've seen this bill as well too. This is a bill that didn't pass again this year, but basically allows for you to get an exemption on sales tax if you've bought and sold a car within a certain amount of time frame. Right now, as a dealer, one of the advantages of buying from a dealer is if you trade in a car, you get that sales tax exemption. This is a bill that would basically do that for the general public as well. So if you bought a car and sold a car within a 12-month period, you could file an get a refund from the state. It would be actually, the way they looked at it was doing it through your taxes. There would be some type of piece on your taxes that you would be able to basically check the box and get some type of refund back, or apply it to your taxes. They attempted it a little bit different way this year, and it still didn't pass. The biggest thing for that is because it had a large fiscal note. The two largest items of sales tax generation in the state of Utah are either cars or food. So if we take sales tax away on cars, even if it's as simple as this type of thing, somebody selling a car within a 12-month period, it has a potentially large fiscal note, meaning there's a lot of money it can cost the state. In this case, it was millions and millions of dollars that it would have potentially cost the state. That's what kept it from basically going through. As much as the legislator would like to have it passed, I don't know that it's going to, unless he can figure out a way to do it without having the large fiscal note. Okay, so again, that one didn't pass. That'll take us over to page 5, HB 115, Motor Vehicle Sales Tax Amendments. This was an interesting bill, an interesting concept, and this bill again was related to, and why it didn't pass was because of the large fiscal note associated with it. This was a bill that would basically say if you bought a car that's 15 years or older, that you wouldn't have to pay sales tax on it. Kind of an interesting concept. I don't get it a little bit. If we're selling anything else that's thrift related or older or things like that, we typically are paying sales tax on it. Again, this is going back to a large fiscal note. It didn't pass for that reason. I would suspect we'll see concepts of this in the previous bill in future legislation. As much as we want to stop the idea of somebody getting a refund for sales tax by purchasing on their own, we'd really like to keep that for just the dealer only, but it's a hard one to argue. So the way that we argue it is it's a large fiscal note for the state of Utah, and they lose out on money. So jumping into our next section, it's towing and repair bills. Anybody here do towing? Not too much. I'm going to hit on them more for our online class than anything. I'll be fairly quick. They're pretty easy. The first one, HB 119, Automotive Repair Business Amendments. This is a bill that started last year, finished up this year, didn't get through. Basically, it's saying that if you are if you're an insurance company and you're selling insurance, you can then provide to the customer information on whether or not, when they want to have their car repaired for like a crash or something like that goes through their insurance company, you can specify in the insurance whether or not you want to allow or not allow for aftermarket parts, whether it's OEM or aftermarket parts. In this case, the insurance company would have you pay a little bit more in premiums if your policy is going to say you only are allowed to use OEM parts, or it'd be less if you're going to be with aftermarket parts because they're typically a little bit less. So that's basically what the bill says. It goes into effect May 6th. There's no real action needed for you as a dealer because it's all handled by the insurance companies. They have to make the notification. The only thing for you as a dealer is if you do body shop work and you deal with insurance agents, make sure you understand whether you're dealing with OEM parts or the aftermarket parts. Next page, HB 268, towing notice and ownership rights modifications. This basically says that if you are doing a private property tow, you need to make sure that you give all the proper documentation for that if you're going to file a lien on that vehicle. They were finding that sometimes those proper documentations weren't being filed and it was causing problems. So this basically says if you are going to do a private property tow, possessory lien related to the vehicle has been towed is not enforceable if required notice was not properly provided to the owner or the lien holder. So you just need to make sure you're providing proper notification to that owner and or lien holder for that private property tow. Okay. SB 120 towing modifications. This is a bill that addresses what's called the non-consent police-generated tow. And this is basically where the vehicle maybe is abandoned on the side of the road, things like that. They come in and they ask it to be towed. If it is being towed, basically, that tow has to go to a tow yard within the county that the tow happens at. So if the tow happens in Salt Lake County, it has to go to an impound yard within Salt Lake County. There are a couple exceptions that are allowed within the bill. Basically, it basically requires police or local law enforcement to make that justification of that additional change. The reason that was added in there was sometimes in rural counties, you could be on the county line. It could be in one county, and it might actually be closer to go to the next county over for their impound yard as opposed to staying within that county. So there is some exceptions that are allowed on towing for some of those situations based on law enforcement side of things. So again, if you are a tower, just make sure that you understand where it's supposed to go to. In most cases, it's going to go to that same county where it was towed at unless law enforcement can specify otherwise for whatever reason. And again, make sure you do all your proper paperwork in regards to those tows as well too. SB 200, impounded vehicle amendments. This is an additional change from a law from last year. Last year we created a piece that had life essential items that were added into things that an individual could have taken out of the vehicle before towing charges were collected, things like that. These were basically life essential items. Those things that were added last year include like prescription medication, medical equipment, shoes, coats, food and water, child safety seats, identification. And if you remember last year, I mentioned human remains. That was the kind of the odd one of the group last year. Human remains like ashes, things like that. So they actually added in a couple different things this year. A cell phone, and then tools specific to the registered owner's current employment. So those are two additional things that now constitute life essential items. So if you've got tools for work, those can be pulled out without having to pay all the fees. They can be pulled out basically immediately. And then there's also going to be a new life essential form that the division will provide available. So if you are providing those things back out of the vehicle, you can document that properly with the individual and with your impound yard. That goes into effect May 6th. Just as an item of note, May 6th is the reason for the May 6th. It seems kind of random. That's 60 days following the legislative session. So bills can go into effect 60 days following the session. They can have a specific date or just upon a signature of the governor. So that's where those dates come into play at. RV Marine, a new dealer franchise. There was one bill that related to this, and that was a new Motorboat Distributor Act, SB 157. The boat dealers were working on this bill. It's basically a way to create a franchise law for the boat dealers. They had a pretty good go at this. There was a few things towards the end of the session they needed to finish up. They just weren't quite to come to an agreement on a couple things. This bill will come back next year, so we'll see it again next year. But it didn't pass for this year, and we'll continue to just watch it because we know we have a few boat dealers that do some business with us. So we'll continue to watch that and help them out wherever we can on the bill. HB 57, Motor Vehicle Division Amendments. there was a lot of things that were in this particular bill, but the biggest thing for this one was this discontinued the issuance of special interest vehicle license plates. This kind of goes along with the vintage plates. So there was a special vehicle interest or special interest vehicle license plate as well. It will do away with that. So that's the biggest thing from that. That was deal with like vehicles that are 20 years old, unique interest or historical value, or was often used. Those cars are basically used similar to a vintage vehicle. So that will go away just like along with the vintage plate, and we'll still be stuck with that classic vehicle moving forward. Turning the page over, HB 294, employer verification amendments. This is the second year we've seen a bill about this. In this case, they wanted to potentially move whenever you have an employer that has so many employees, they have to go through a verification process of those employees. It's previously been as high as 500. They want to even push it down as low as last year, down to 10 employees that you had to go through this verification. They wanted to move it to 125. They wanted to reduce it at one point on the legislation this year, clear down to 15. So we'll continue to watch this. It didn't pass. The reason it didn't pass is a lot of the business community was up in arms about it because it would change a lot of the processes for individual businesses, especially small businesses. If you had 15 employees, then you'd have to go through this national verification process with each employee when you hire them, and it adds extra costs to the small business world. So it didn't pass, but we'll continue to watch it because, again, that was the second year we've seen this particular subject and bill. Moving on, HB 357, amendments to motor vehicle data privacy. No action needed from the dealer side of things, but this will go into effect January 1st of 2027. Basically, it says as vehicles are getting more and more advanced, there's opportunities to have private personal information on vehicles because we're connecting phones to them and other things, and there's a concern about data privacy right now. So this bill would basically require vehicles by the manufacturer to have some type of easy solution on the menu screen of those vehicles to be able to remove that information. This would be required beginning with vehicles that have model years 2030 or basically beyond that date. So obviously there's no way that go back and change that with the manufacturer for a 2020 vehicle, but starting with a 2030 vehicle, it will require manufacturers to have opportunities on the regular menu screen for that individual that's the owner of that vehicle to take all their personal information off of those vehicles. Before, you always had to go in through some type of port, computer system to pull all that information off. So this is a way that will require the manufacturers to take care of that and allow the individual to take it off themselves. Any questions there? All right. HB 481, transportation modifications, Representative Christofferson. This goes into effect May 6th of this year. There really wasn't any major issues on this particular bill. It's a standard transportation bill where they go through a lot of updates and changes. There were things in regards to amending provisions related to visibility and readability of license plates. So if license plates are getting faded or things like that, it would require them to be replaced. The other thing, it would actually repeal the clean vehicle program. So if you've ever issued a clean vehicle program sticker to a vehicle, it's going to do away with that. And I think that's more just because of emissions programs getting better. So that will go away. But the other thing that came up on this particular bill, it was interesting, it actually came up the last day of the legislative session. Had a legislator reach out to me in the hall. Hey, we've got this bill that just went through. Nobody saw this piece on it, and it basically said the bill would actually do away with license plate frames. How many of you have license plate frames that you've put on cars or you've seen on cars, whether that's for your business or you've put on one for your favorite football team or baseball team or basketball team? We see hundreds of those on the road. So this bill actually would have done away with all of those license plate frames. They would have been illegal to have on a car. Well, we know that car dealers have a lot of those that they use that as part of their advertising. So we had to work with the legislator and say, hey, we need to make some adjustments to that. We need to be able to still keep those license plate frames for dealers, for schools. You see a lot of people with alumni frames from the schools that they went to and they graduated from, things like that. So this bill, we went in and made some changes, worked with the legislators. Last day of the session, it's the afternoon. We've got like 6 hours left of the legislative session, and we went in and made those changes to keep the license plate frames. They made some small modifications to it, but it really doesn't change a whole lot. Basically, it says you just can't cover up the decals that are on the license plate or cover up the the numbers for those license plates as well too. So not a lot of changes on it, but they wanted to do away with them altogether. So that's why it was important that we had that conversation with them. And those are the legislative bill changes that we saw for this year. Like I said at the beginning, we didn't see a lot of major changes. There are a couple other things that I want to go through with you, though, as far as some additional updates. The TC 466 form, this is the transaction disclosure form. We've had this in place for about 3 or 4 years now. If you're not utilizing this form, please make sure you're utilizing it. It should be the number one form that you have. It should be the first form other than like a test drive or something like that. But when you're going through the course of the sale, this should probably be the first form that you're utilizing. Basically outlines all the details of what's going to show up on the contract to sell for the customer. This form is going through some changes. We just worked with the tax commission on it. I have in the booklet an updated version of that form, so it looks a little bit different than what you've seen before. It's probably going to go into effect July 1 of this year. We have the revision date initially as March of 26, but as talking to the tax commission, that's going to change a little bit, and it's probably going to go into effect July 1 in regards to this update. So again, if you're not utilizing the form, please make sure you're utilizing it. You can find all of those forms, those TC forms, on the tax commission website at tax.utah.gov, but make sure you're utilizing this form. A couple things on this form. There's kind of a new box. It's kind of a grayed out box here on that form. So if you turn to page 12, I have the sample of the form, but there is a monthly payment information. So if you're doing financing for the customer, you need to provide information about what that monthly payment is with and without optional charges. We know that's going to take a little bit of work. If you're utilizing computer systems, most should be able to do that. If they don't now already, reach out to them and let them know that that's part of the new legislative changes for the state of Utah, and they should be able to provide you with some options for doing that. If you don't provide financing, you do not need to put anything in this box because you're not providing that financing. You can just put NA, not available or not applicable for what you're doing. That's probably the biggest thing. A lot of the rest is just rewording of some things, making sure it's a little more, making sure it's understood a little bit better for the customer more than anything. So again, we spent a few months talking with the tax commission on that particular update to that form. It should be good to go. Like I said, July 1, we'll probably start seeing that in the next couple weeks in regards to that form as well too. The next page is coming from the insurance department, Utah Insurance Department, and this is actually a piece that they sent out probably a month or so ago, month or two ago, so back to around the first of the year. Basically says that if you're offering gap insurance as a product within your dealership, there's some registration process that you have to go through as an individual and as the dealership. So this was the bulletin that was provided to them. And then the next page in the book is the instructions that go with getting that all taken care of. So there is a process for getting licensed. You need to go through the license of the individual applicant first. So that's the person that's in the office or in the dealership that's providing that gap insurance policy to start with. So there's a process that you need to go through there, a licensing, there's some fingerprinting. And then the second part is you have to also, once the individual is gone through and been approved, wait about 24 to 48 hours, and then you have to go through that process for the business as well too. And so the additional information is there on going through that process. That was all provided from the Utah Insurance Department. If you have questions on that process, please reach out to them. Our contact information is there on page 15 of the details in regards to the Utah Insurance Department. They're great to work with. I have an ongoing relationship with the insurance commissioner, Commissioner Pike. He's great to work with. He wants to make sure that dealers are doing it right. They were seeing that those that were offering that weren't going through the renewal process. So there is a renewal process with that insurance. I think it's every 2 years you have to go through and renew that license. There's a fee that goes with it. And that's just to make sure they understand who is offering that insurance product and who is not. So make sure that if you are offering gap insurance, that is renewed every 2 years from the date of issuance. The next thing I have on the book in our last section, I have the buyer's guide in here. We haven't spent a lot of time over the years talking about the buyer's guide, but we had an issue come up during the legislative session. There was a bill that came up. It never got anywhere. It didn't even get numbered, but it was an issue that we spent about 2 or 3 weeks up at the Capitol dealing with. And it goes back to the idea of a 3-day right of return. Anybody been ever asked about, is there a 3-day right of return in the used car industry? It's been asked before. There is not currently a 3-day right of return policy for cars. There is a 3-day right of return or a 3-day right of rescission policy in the state of Utah, but it deals with door-to-door sales. And as you know, as a car dealer, you have to do business at at your place of business, so you can't go and sell cars door to door. So that policy does not apply to the automotive industry. We had a legislator that had an issue with a constituent. Constituent approached them. They had a pretty bad experience with a car dealership. I won't go into who the dealership was, but they had a pretty bad experience in regards to the dealership where they were promised one thing and it didn't happen. And it really came down to the difference of an as-is vehicle versus a vehicle with a warranty. The situation happened where the customer was told they wanted to buy a car. It was an older car. I get it. It's going to have some issues. The dealership said, hey, we have a warranty. We'll offer a 5-day warranty. If there's an issue that comes up in those 5 days, we'll get it taken care of. They had some basics of what was allowed or not allowed with it. What ended up happening is they brought the car back 2 days later after they had purchased it because they knew there was something already wrong with it. The dealer already knew it, and they said they would get it taken care of. After a number of weeks of going back and forth with the car, a couple weeks turned into a couple months, and pretty soon they got to the point where the dealer said, sorry, we're not going to take care of this problem anymore for you. And they just basically threw it back onto the customer. Now, obviously, if you've been in the car business for a long time, that's not the best way to handle that kind of situation. You always want to make sure that you make that customer whole. So that customer, knowing his legislator, went to his legislator and said, hey, we need to fix this. And the legislator came to us and said, we need a 3-day return policy, basically for cars, all cars. That's what he wanted. So a mandatory 3-day return policy. Obviously, we said, time out. We don't want to go down that road. It opens up a lot of can of worms of different things from the financing side. That's obviously the big issue. And, if you finance something and then having to unwind it 3 days later can cause a real issue. Also, it creates the possibility of having basically a free car rental for the weekend. And we don't want to go down that route. Somebody buys a car on Friday, they take it for the weekend, bring it back on Monday, say, I don't like it. That's not the direction we want to go. So the biggest thing from this, we were able to talk with the legislator. We talked with the constituent. I actually spent some time talking with the constituent on a number of different issues and different things related to the issue that he had. We helped him out getting him to another dealership that would help him out in buying a car. It was a car for his daughter. Obviously, it's a high school kid, so it's not a brand new car, and that's probably why there was an issue with it to start with. But we helped him out, get him into another car. And helped him through the process of, hey, we really should talk with a dealer that's going to help you out. So we recommended a couple dealers for him to talk with, help him through that, and that actually allowed us to not have to run that piece of legislation, which is helpful. So it didn't pass. We didn't have to do anything as far as stick with other legislators, but we just said, hey, it's not going to work. Let's start talking about some other things that we can do to help out the industry. In that meeting, we had ourselves, we had the New Car Dealers Association, we had Motor Vehicle Enforcement, we had the Tax Commission, we also had Consumer Protection. So the Director of Consumer Protection was there. And so we talked about all the different ways that we can help the public in these kind of situations. So we're going to be working with the Consumer Protection Division and Tax Commission to come up with some information that will be helpful for the dealer on making sure that they handle things correctly, but more importantly for the public on helping the public identify if there is an issue where they need to go to first. In this particular situation, the constituent went to their attorney first, and then their attorney went right to the legislator. That was how it was done. And if they understand the process a little bit better, we know that we can help them out by going to motor vehicle and to consumer protection. They can actually help that issue and probably be substantially cheaper than going to the attorney to start with. Nothing against attorneys, but there's usually a good price tag that goes with attorneys. So that's what we help them understand. So there will be some public education that we're going to do in collaboration with the Consumer Protection Division. The other thing that came up that I want you to be aware of is one of the things that Consumer Protection talked about is the enforcement of the buyer's guide. Currently, the law states that as a buyer's guide, you have to have this with each vehicle. The technicality of the law says that this is supposed to be posted or available in each vehicle that you offer for sale. I know from driving around and talking with dealers that it's not always in those vehicles. In fact, it's very rarely in those vehicles, either posted on the window or on the dash so it can be seen from the outside. My recommendation from Consumer Protection and talking with them is they want to see the being done correctly. The biggest thing for them is obviously making sure that it's provided as part of the documentation. But they would like to see the dealers having these available on those cars so that the customer knows that yes, this vehicle is as is, or this vehicle has a warranty. And I would say if you're offering something that has a warranty, I would make sure that you post that on the vehicle. Most of the general public understands that if you're buying a used car, it is as is. There's no additional warranty with it. Sometimes it may have a manufacturer left on it. If there is any type of warranty left on it, do not mark the one as is, no dealer warranty. If there's any type of warranty, even if it's your own warranty that you're offering, make sure you mark it as warranty and then provide the details about what that warranty includes. Whether that's parts covered, so many days, whatever it is, make sure you have the documentation that you can put in here, as well as any other documentation. If it's a third-party company that's offering that service contract or warranty or whatever it is that you're doing, make sure you have that information included with it. Part of the issue that we ran into with this 3-day right of return issue is the dealer had marked as is no dealer warranty, but then they had also offered to the customer a 5-day warranty. And now we had some conflicting documents. The warranty documents plus the as is were giving them some issues. That would have been their first kind of red flag to the individual that, hey, things were not adding up. And if they would have gone to consumer protection, they probably would have gotten the issue taken care of right away because of those two conflicting documents to start with. So as you're going through your documents, make sure you have things that are in congruence with each other. They're not conflicting, and this is a big one. So if you offer a warranty, don't mark the as is no dealer warranty in those kind of situations. And again, if you're able to, please, I would encourage you to make sure that those are posted in your vehicles as well too. That's the last of the information that we have. There's 2 other pieces here I have, last pages. Obviously some information on Curtis J. Vernon Insurance. If you need them to help out, even if it's just to review your insurance, please reach out to them. There's their phone number. And then also we have an application for the Utah Automotive Alliance. Again, the cost for that's basically 50 cents a day. We'd encourage you to be a member of the association. We get discounts on our title and registration service, a few other things as well too. But we'd encourage you to be part of the association. And make sure that your voice is heard. We'd love to be able to hear from dealers and hear the issues that you're having so that we can go to the Capitol and try and solve those issues, whether it's title delivery from a financial institution, whether we're dealing with dealer bond side of things, sales tax, whatever it is, we're there to try and help you guys out as much as we can. So again, we would encourage you to be part of the association. And we're here to help you out. So feel free to reach out to us anytime, any of our staff or myself. You'll feel free to reach out to us on our website. We also have a text to chat feature as well. So if you go onto our website, idsinfo.com, there's in the bottom right-hand corner, you can actually put your information in there. It comes to a couple of our staff here. We can answer your questions. I even try to monitor after hours as much as I can and help you out however we can. You have the function of being able to just chat or even send pictures or whatever else to us. I have a few people that have done that. Hey, I have an issue with this title. I don't understand it. Where do I sign on this? You can reach out to us that way as well too. So our staff is here to help you out as much as we can. We've got great staff that are here. I've got a number of my staff that have been working on title stuff for 25 plus years with us. I think I have one that's approaching 30 years with us. And so they understand that process very well. And again, we're happy to help. But as far as your education, we'll get all the details as far as that you've completed the education here. It's probably going to take about 24 hours for it to be online, but then you should be able to go in and renew your license as soon as you have that information from Motor Vehicle Enforcement Division. Any other questions? What did we do today? That was about 45 minutes. Perfect. Okay. Let me know if there's something else. Be glad to help out. It's good to have you here.